Holy shit. This guy, I just watched the 50th episode, end of the beginning, beginning of the end, but the 49th episode, One for All, is insane. That's one of the best battle sequences I've ever seen. And just so y'all know, so I'm reviewing the first 12 episodes of this. So there's 4 story arcs in total in this season 3, in all of season 3, and there's 25 episodes just like season 2. So I'm reviewing the Forest Training Camp arc, which is 7 episodes, episodes 39 to 45, and then the Hideout Raid arc, which is 5 episodes, episodes 46 to 50. So I'm reviewing those 2. The next 2 I'll review in the second video here. I haven't seen those yet, but this was insane. Like, somehow they just keep stepping up, which I guess makes sense because they're like increasing their power so they can do more cool things in the show. But I mean, okay, I'll start with the Forest Training Camp arc, where they go to the summer camp for a week, and they're kind of instead of honing their experience and everything, they're honing their actual quirks. So they're making them even stronger in theory, which it is obviously shown that they do. But they're making them stronger quirks, and like giving them just basically a speed run because they want to give them their provisional hero licenses, which is actually the title of the next arc, which is 11 episodes. So that's pretty long. But they want to give them their provisional hero license so the students can start actually using their quirks to fight and not be reprimanded, so they can essentially defend themselves. But this first arc here, the Forest Training Camp arc, was really good. What I really liked about it though is the relationship between Red Riot, who is he's a Illyrio, so he's the guy that can turn into rock, or turn his skin into like rock hard, and Bakugo. So I like their friendship a lot. Like it's really cool, especially like the trust and loyalty they have in each other, and it does pay off. In the 49th episode, it pays off pretty well, but just throughout, like, it's really cool to see them like bond and like actually, that. Because Bakugo had everyone basically against him from the beginning, but I think everyone's starting to warm up to him a bit and just get that that's his personality. But especially like Illyrio, it was cool to see their friendship, especially since Illyrio is also like a friend of Deku. And so that was awesome to see. Also, the relationship between Shoto and Deku was really cool as well, just to kind of expand on that a bit and get that. And you see that Bakugo, straight off the bat, when they're doing the pool race thing, he's like in fierce competition against Shoto and Deku, and just wants to take them down no matter what, at anything. But yeah, so those little friendships that kind of bloomed a bit between them. You had Mineta and Denki, who's the electric guy. You had Mineta and him have some sort of a bond, I guess, and like some sort of friendships. And I will say that I was less annoyed with Mineta in the first half of this season than I was before, but that's because they put him in a back burner role, like a support role. I felt like more so in the last half of the second season, he was just really kind of there, like always with Deku in a sense. I was just like, this isn't a good pairing here. But I think him with Denki is a better pairing, and just putting him in a back role instead of up front. I will say he does show uses for his powers more, which I'm like, okay, so you actually are somewhat useful. Because before I'm like, how did this guy ever win? But anyway, that's besides the point. So yeah, I kind of like the new pairings they made up here. But in the training camp arc, it was cool that they introduced us to the Wild Wild Pussycats and like that kind of 4-person like group, and all their powers were pretty interesting. And what was even cooler though is actually getting to see these guys fight villains. And I think Koda's whole like backstory and everything was really cool too. Like just someone that hates quirks in general and like super like powers in general. But he grows up all around heroes. And then Deku is like, I need to inexplicably, because you have to remember that I believe it was All Might that told him being a true hero is doing something when you're like not needed to do it or something like that, like just doing it for the sake of like help, like you don't rely on any praise or anything. So that's where he's coming from in this. and that's what he does here. He for no like realistically for no reason he gets involved in trying to help Koda essentially heal like mentally and emotionally from the death of his parents. And his parents actually died to this like muscular dude that can like I guess expand his muscle fibers and get even stronger and faster. And so Deku eventually actually has to fight him to save Koda, and he goes to 1,000,000% on his power, which I didn't even think was possible. But he shows, and this is a good precursor for what All Might eventually does. But Deku kind of shows like the insane power that he has at his disposal, but he just ravages his body so brutally, and he almost loses the fight too until Koda kind of steps in and helps him out a bit, just to distract the muscle guy for a minute, and then Deku can finally overcome it. But yeah, he's just running through, and he's trying to save his friends, and like even after his body's all destroyed, he's still running and like saving people, carrying Koda on his back, and like eventually Eraserhead figures out. But I like the villains that they had here. They had the guy that can like shoot the flames. They had the black and white guy that can like I guess make duplicates appear, which I thought was a pretty cool power. I don't understand what that Psycho Girl's power is with like the blood and everything. I don't get that. The lizard guy was a bit weird. I don't understand his power either, except for the fact that he's a lizard. And I guess the rock guy can maybe just bring people to him, like pull like magnetics, like he can just pull people to him. I guess that's the only thing I can think. But yeah, so it was interesting to see this like Vanguard group that they had and fighting in the different powers there. But what was really cool and also kind of devastating was the magic guy that can like compress people. So he can just essentially compress people into little balls and then take them around with him. And so we find out towards the end of the arc that the reason they're here is to capture Bakugo because they think they can turn him to the dark side and make him like a villain and everything, which is honestly where and I've said this on this, I thought in the 3rd and 4th season, like around there, he would turn into a villain. But so Bakugo actually does get captured. They also capture Tokiyami, but eventually, or not eventually, they captured both of them. But then Menzo, which was also cool to see his ability. He's the dupli arm guy. He saves Tokiyami, but doesn't save. Or no, he doesn't save them. He saves the couple pieces of ice. I forget actually who saves them, but one of the heroes here like saves Tokiyami and frees him, but they can't get Bakugo, and Bakugo is like taken with them. But yeah, so you had kind of that whole arc, and then Bakugo gets kidnapped, and they talk about like it was something I think like 27 students in total were either injured like severely or like unconscious. And Deku was one of them, and he talks about how he's like in and out of consciousness in the hospital, and like same with Momo was also one, and there was a few from Class B as well. It was cool seeing Class B's quirks like Kendo's big hand quirk and how that was used, and also the Iron guy. I don't know what it is, but he gets shot like multiple times in the head as he's like Iron, and he's still chilling. But and they only capture 3 out of the 10 villains that showed up because the portal guy saves the rest. The whole time I kept thinking though, like Eraserhead could just show up and like blink the things out, but that's why they were distracting him, I guess. But anyway, so that kind of arc is somewhat wrapped up there. But it leads to an even bigger arc, which I'm pretty sure. So these 5 seasons are broken down into 3 like sections, and then there's arcs in each section. And I believe this next arc here, so when it hits the 50th, like after the 50th episode, so this next arc, the Hideout Raid arc, is the end of this massive like arc this massive like storyline, I guess, that they've been doing. But this arc just was insane. So you start with them in the hospital, and essentially it's Lorio, who's the rock guy. You have him and Shoto essentially trying to convince the class to like have Momo make a second like tracker, because she put like a tracker on one of the villains, and like go and try to save Bakugo. Instead of letting, like, they want to do something, they want to find the thing, they want to help, and so eventually everyone basically turns again and is like, no, you shouldn't do that, that's breaking the rules. Which I find this whole rule thing ridiculous, because it's like, it's literally saying like, if you use your powers and break the laws to use them, then you're just as bad as a villain. And I'm like, they're using them to they're not even using their powers per se. They're trying to go save a kidnapped classmate. And like even in the beginning with the hero killer, I'm like, how can you reprimand them for capturing the hero killer? Like, I understand how it could have gone bad, and I understand they don't have the license and the provisions to do it, and you want to keep that status quo in place. But at the same time, it is pretty ridiculous that you're saying that they're exactly like villains because they went and saved people. Like, that's absurd to me, but I guess they got to keep the status quo in place, so screw it. But yeah, so Shoto and Illyrio are doing that, and everyone's saying no, and especially Tenya. He's like, no way, you can't do that. But they tell Deku like to meet them in the front if he wants to go with them. Like, even though he's pretty badly injured, like this is the first day he's actually woken up like fully. But yeah, so Deku ends up meeting them out front, and Momo and actually Tenya joins them after he realizes that he can't convince them to stay out. So he's like, I'm gonna go with you to supervise you, essentially. So they all go, and they actually get to the hideout, and they have disguises on and everything. They get to the hideout. What they get to is the hideout that that All for One is at, and like the Nemu factories, I think is what the Nemus. They get to that like factory area, where Bakugo is actually held in the bar. But what's really cool is that, and you see this on like a screen where Eraserhead's like, I take like responsibility for my actions, because he eventually lets them, in the previous arc, he lets them use their powers to try to hurt or not hurt, but in self-defense, which I thought was acceptable, but I guess people are scared, because they are kids, to be fair. But you have the principal and him, and they're basically saying if he dies or something happens, like this is the end of the UA in total. But it's interesting where you have Eraserhead essentially saying like he has so much faith in Bakugo. He says on TV like, if they're planning on turning him as a villain, then let me tell them Eraserhead says he is the top guy in my class who's dedicated himself so hard to be a good guy, to be a hero, that if they try to turn him to the dark side, then they're gonna have a tough time. And actually, you see Bakugo, like they release his binds and everything, and because they're like, we're trying to recruit him, he should be like acting like one of us, and so they release him, and then he like immediately just blasts them away, and like you can see he's cornered. And what I've liked about this season so far is that they go into Bakugo's mind and being like, oh, he's actually strategizing. Like, he's actually intelligent. He's not just, like, being crazy. Like, he's thinking of ways out. He understands that he's cornered and he might have to run away, which I think is interesting, because I think after the final exam where Deku and him went up against All Might, he's thinking more so it's, like, it's acceptable to, like, retreat if needed, like, if required to, like, escape and then fight another day. So like, obviously he wants to win at all costs, but I think he's understanding that it is an acceptable win if you just live. So yeah, that's quite interesting to see. But he essentially is about to take all, I think at this point it would be 8 of them on. But more so he's trying to back away and like get to the back door and run. But as he's about to fight them, you have All Might just come smashing through the bar wall, and you see all this little raid happening. And all of a sudden, it like pans to the hideout where Deku is and that group of friends, and you see like Mount Lady like kicking in the wall, and like all of them, and they at the Nomu factory, they like the heroes that are there, like Best Jeanist, Mount Lady, they're there kind of like wrapping them up, and there's a couple more, I forget who they are. Oh, there's the Orca guy. But they take down the Nomus and everything like that, and then at the bar, like instantly that tree guy just captures everyone, and then they have a little like thing, I guess, that can go like, it can zip through you, so he makes the smoke guy fall unconscious, which is really cool. And then you have the hand guy there like insisting like, no, something will happen, like the Nomus are coming, like blah blah blah, and he calls out to his master and everything, and almost like, it's over, you're done. And they have ever last out there, I think, I don't know, but they have the fire guy out there with like a whole battalion of people, and all of a sudden Nomu starts showing up, even though the smoke guy is down, but it's like gray sludge is making them appear, and All Might realizes that it is All for One who's bringing them there, and so there's a big battle that ensues with the Nomus, and eventually they actually All for One takes Bakugo and and all the villains. He like teleports them out with this gray sludge, and he teleports them to the Nomu factory. And what happens though is that he essentially blasts all of the heroes, but Best Genius like defends them. And it turns out that Best Genius like power is like fabric manipulation. I guess like he can turn the fabric into like super hard like substances or something, and he can control them, which is pretty cool. That's what he does. And All for One is like, that should have killed you all, but you like blocked it. Like, so he was impressed with him, but then he realizes that his power isn't worth like taking, because his power is not really that useful. It's more so that his experience is useful. And it's interesting to see that the number 4 guy isn't really based on power, it's just based on strategy and experience. So that was pretty cool. But then he just blasts him in the stomach and blood flies everywhere. And I was like, is like, he's dead. Like they just killed Best Genius, which he's unconscious, I guess. Like, I don't know if he's fully dead, because a lot of these guys have suffered worse, but like it appears that he just killed the number 4 hero in one blast, like one hand cannon blast, and just a hole right through him, and it was insane to see. But yeah, so then you get the fight. Like All Might shows up and like punches, because you have All Might showing up, and then you have Bakugo actually taking on 6 of the guys, just like floating around and like jumping around, and so he's like floating around and everything, and then Deku and them, like Tenya like tells Deku like, you can't go in there and fight, you have to stay here. Like All Might, he would just get him in like more trouble and everything. And then Deku's like, okay, let's not fight, but we can save Bakugo still. And he's saying that it's gonna rely on Illyrio to like help us, because he's Bakugo's friend, and Deku knows that like if anyone tries to convince him to like back off, he won't listen. But if Illyrio tries to, he would, like, because of their friendship, he would follow. And so they come up with the strategy, and like Tenya is in, and so they kind of go up this little ramp, and then Illyrio like reaches out to Bakugo and is like, here, like, you know, fly away and like retreat. And so Bakugo joins them, and so it's Tenya, Illyrio, Deku, and now Bakugo that are in their little group. And then you have Momo and Shoto in their like 2-person group. And as Deku and them are like flying away, Momo and Shoto start running, so they're gonna like regroup somewhere else. They're retreating, but that leaves just All Might, and that's the plan, because then All Might can use his full ability, which would normally just like shatter like everything, and because Bakugo is there, he doesn't want to use it, but now he can, because there's no danger in place. And Gran Torino actually does show up and starts like helping him as well, and he kind of distracts the other guys, and eventually All for One like just sends them away. And he has this ability apparently that he can force quirks, so like, because the smoke guy is knocked out, so he like uses the force quirk on the smoke guy to then like have them sent away, but the hands guy doesn't want them to leave, so he's like, no, Master will stay with you, like All Might's here, we can take him together, and like all that. He wants to protect his master essentially, because his master's the only one that really came for him at a certain time. And but the master's like, no, and he uses the magnetic thing to like send them out into the portal and like close the portal and blah blah blah. But so they're essentially out of the fight, so now it's just All for One, Gran Torino, and All Might fighting in this area. And now they said that they decimated half of the area that they were in, the market area that they were in, I guess, the city. And these 3 episodes that this battle takes place in are perhaps like some of the best they are the best episodes of this whole series so far, because I thought that the episode of My Hero was the best so far, but I think, these 3 episodes, if I had to choose one of these 3, there's All for One, Symbol of Peace, and then One for All. If I had to choose one of them, I think maybe Symbol of Peace or One for All, or the 2, like one of those would be the best. It's still All for One is still great, but Yeah, I think one of those other two, because that kind of sets it up. But anyway, so you have now All Might kind of fighting this, and you see All Might's kind of like true potential, like his full ability here, and actually, so All for One actually says that like he's weaker than originally when he fought him 5 years ago. And he even says like you killed me once, like what are you gonna do, kill me again, like I'll just come back, kind of thing. Like you basically can, I'm immortal, you can never defeat me. And All Might just is like, this is ridiculous. And then later in, so he somehow, even though All for One's badly hurt, he still manages to get All Might into his like weakened form by just beating the crap out of him. And like all of a sudden, like, and there's there's a news crew, so the world is watching. Like there's like a news helicopter that somehow didn't get blown away. But so the world's watching, and they all of a sudden All Might like goes back into his weakened form, and everyone's like, wait, that's all. And so like his secret that he wanted no one to know, because he always wanted to be like the symbol of peace, which this happens in the Symbol of Peace episode, is like revealed. And then what like I got like chills when I saw this, but like it didn't matter that even in his weakened form, everyone was like, that's still All Might, even in this form he can take him, like blah. And like everything that All Might had been worried about throughout his whole life, of them seeing him in a weakened state, it didn't matter to anyone. That they were like, that's still All Might, he's still awesome and he can win. And that was cool to see, like the dedication people had in him. And you see like Deku and Bakugo and all of them like watching too. And this is Bakugo's first time seeing him in this form, and so it's like a massive shock for him, but he like still sees it and is like, yeah, it doesn't matter, you're my hero, like go for it, which was awesome to see for like All Might and everything. But and then in One for All, they get to the point where, so even All Might in his weakened form has enough power, and he like kind of summons his power from like his past masters in a sense, or his past like predecessors and his master in a sense, where he like puts all of the juice left in like the little bit, and you find out that he, by transferring his power, he actually like only has remnants of his power in him, so once he uses it up, it's done. And like now Deku has the full power essentially. And but All Might essentially uses the last of this ember like that's burning inside of him to like throw a couple final punches, and he's smart about it. And this is one thing that Gran Torino told him, is like, you can't just be full force about it anymore, because you're not as strong as him. You have to be smart about how you approach this. And so he essentially swaps power between his hands, so it's like he'll shift power from one hand to the other and then punch with that one, and he actually ends up breaking the mask on the guy. And then like, I don't know, just his fighting style was so insane to see, and it was really cool that you got to see him like actually being smart about it and like using his wits, instead of just being full force like he might normally be able to. But yeah, he long story short, like after like some of the heroes arrive, and like so some of the other heroes kind of save him a bit, and then it lets him like regain like confidence in himself, and like trust that he's able to like bolster himself, and he's like, I'm not alone, like I have all these people counting on me, and they're here with me to fight with me. And then you had Everest or Everlast, I don't know, the fire guy, sees All Might, and he's like, are you serious? Like, you're the guy that if you lose this, then it's like, he's like, for so long I've tried to be better than you and be number one and all this, but I was never able to, and I realized the gap was so wide between us. So you better win this, essentially. Like, you better prove that you're number one, and that's the reason you're number one. And that like gives All Might that little bit more energy of what he needs, and it really shows that all these heroes are in it together, even if they all might hate one another or want to beat one another in like status. They still are all in it together for the good of humanity, which kind of disproves the Hero Killer Stain's like philosophy of like all heroes are just in it for money and everything, which I'm sure a lot of them are, but like ultimately you are dedicating your life to helping people and bettering people, even if it might be for money. So yeah, it was cool to see that kind of little bond that all the heroes had at this elite level. But yeah, eventually All Might does defeat All for One, and I thought he kills him. He doesn't. He just has him, like, he knocks him out, and then they arrest him and put him in this place called Tartarus, which is like a hero, it's like a villain prison, like a secret villain prison. Not a secret, like an ultimate villain prison. But yeah, then you have, you see, and what Oh, this part might be my favorite part of this whole series yet. Is like even he's in his weakened form. He has just punched All for One, and he's standing there in his like in his kind of decrepit body and everything, and he puts a hand out, or he puts a hand up, and is like basically like I won no matter what, and he goes back into his full All Might form one last time, and then Gran Torino's like that's it for him. He's done. Like he can't fight in that form ever again, which you do find out in the final episode of this arc, end of the beginning, beginning of the end. That is true. He no longer can use the form to fight. But yeah, so he's like totally disheveled and everything, and he has to go to the hospital obviously because he's pretty messed up. But yeah, that was just really powerful. And then in the episode end of the beginning of end, he there's a news camera there, and he's like turned away from it, and he points to it, and he's like, "Now it's your turn," which is like everyone's like thinking that it means. And Deku says this in the episode, so obviously if you watched it, you'll know. But I just felt that moment as well was like very impactful and powerful, where he's saying like, even though he's basically saying like, I can no longer fight Deku. Like, it's all up to you at this point to become my successor and actually, like, take this mantle from me. Which was really awesome to see. Because he's, like, fully trusting Deku now. And he fully commits as well when he goes and sits down and talks to his mom to, like, have Deku come back to UA and in the dorms. When All Might, like, dedicates his life to him, that's just a moment of, like... Because he's there trying to convince his mom to, like, send him back to school and, like, reassure parents that he'll be able to, take care of him. But it goes into something more where he's actually bowing to them and saying, like, I have passed my torch. I'm done. I'm passing it on to, like, Deku. We need Deku. And it's a moment of just unbelievable sincerity from all three of these characters. And the mom just saying, like, I can't have you going back. I can't be worrying about you day in, day out. Like, I know it's your dream, but I just can't bring myself to do it as your mom. It's the right thing to do for you is to hold you here. And I was thinking, like, oh my gosh, this is so sad because it's, like, his dream that it's his dream to do this. It's what he's always wanted, and now it's here. And, like, as a parent, like, I don't know, like, I understand like where she's coming from as a parent per se, but like I just as a kid, you know, or as like someone that like just aspires like to do a lot, like that would be so devastating for me. If just like, but you'd have to understand it as the child, like you'd have, I don't know, and you see like Deku like brings out the letter that Kota sent him and everything. And the mom just kind of collapses when All Might like bows to them and is saying like, or like kneels to them basically on his hands and knees, and like is saying like we need him, like he is the symbol of peace, the next symbol of peace. And it's, I don't know, it's just a really impactful scene. It's incredible to see. Here, so that's where I'm gonna end it. It's that fight was just amazing. I would honestly put that fight. And I'm sure there's better fights to come, so maybe I might end up changing this. But for now, I would put that fight up against the fight that kind of like Aang and Fire Lord Sozin have in the final episode. Because the fight that they have, I'm not that big of a fan of. The fight I'm a fan of, in Avatar at least, is when Zuko and Azula fight each other. I think that's the masterpiece fight of that show. Not the Aang and Fire Lord Sozin fight. So I'd honestly put this up against the Aang and Fire Lord Sozin fight. I think there is just cooler and more of an impactful moment because it's like throughout the series, this is the end of the series like thing. But this fight, just the power it had, like in like the show as a total, I think is it's almost there. I shouldn't say it's on par too, because that the Aang and Fire Lord Sozin fight is still insane. But this fight between All Might and All for One almost reaches that, I will say, almost. And if it does get better, I've been told it gets better than this, which I keep saying that in everything I do, like all of these things. But I have been told it gets better than this somehow. So we will see, and hopefully it does, because I'm all for it. But this was incredible. I couldn't believe when I started watching this show. I wouldn't believe that this is where they were going with it. So yeah, it's been cool. Have a good one, guys. I just can't wait to watch the rest of this show.